The phone rang at 3 in the morning, and the first thing I heard was my brother's whisper. "Don't come home. They know everything." "Eli? What are you talking about? Who?" The line went dead. I sat up so fast the blanket slid to the floor. My heart was pounding, my head still foggy from sleep. Eli never called me at night, never whispered, and never sounded like he was hiding from someone. I hit redial. Straight to voicemail. Tried again. Same result. The silence in my apartment suddenly felt heavier, pressing against my ears. I reached for the lamp, its dim yellow light spilling over the room. The clock read 3:02 a.m. My suitcase sat in the corner, already packed for the morning trip home. I opened our family group chat. The last message from Mom had been 2 days ago. "See you soon for my birthday, Matt Redheart." Dad hadn't texted me in weeks. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then a vibration in my hand. A new text. Unknown number. Don't trust them. No punctuation. No name. No explanation. A faint sound made me look up, the creak of floorboards in the hallway outside my apartment. My building was old and sounds traveled, but this was different. Slow, measured, deliberate. I got up, my bare feet cold against the floor, and moved quietly to the door. Pressed my ear against it. 3 slow knocks. I froze. "Matthew," a voice, muffled through the door. "Calm. Too calm. We need to talk about your family." Every muscle in my body locked. I didn't answer. The knocks came again, slower this time. The voice leaned in, almost a whisper. "Your brother was right. You shouldn't come home. But you can't stay here either." I looked through the peephole. The hallway light flickered, stretching shadows across the walls. A tall figure in a dark coat stood perfectly still, head slightly tilted, like they were listening. They stayed like that for several long seconds, then turned and walked away. Not hurried, deliberate, as if they knew I'd be watching. The echo of their footsteps faded into silence. I stood there, gripping the lock, my breathing loud in my own ears. Then I locked the door again. And again. I checked the windows. Shut the blinds. My suitcase waited in the corner like an accusation. Every instinct screamed at me not to go home. But if something had happened to my family, could I really stay away? That's when I noticed the voicemail icon blinking on my phone. One new message. From Eli's number. I pressed play. Static. Then his voice, barely audible. "They're coming for me first. Then you." I replayed the voicemail 3 times, pressing the phone hard to my ear, straining to catch every syllable through the hiss of static. "They're coming for me first. Then you." The way Eli's voice cracked on the last word made my stomach twist. He sounded terrified. Broken. I called him back. Straight to voicemail. Tried again. Same thing. By the 4th attempt, my hands were shaking. The air in my apartment felt thick, stale. I stood, pacing, trying to decide if I should call the police. But what would I even say? My brother told me not to come home and hung up? They'd dismiss it. And if Eli was hiding from someone, calling the cops might make it worse. I yanked on jeans, pulled a hoodie over my head, and checked the peephole. The hallway was empty, but the flickering light above my door was still buzzing faintly, like an insect trapped in glass. I moved to my desk and flipped open my laptop. Maybe I could track Eli's phone. But before I could even log in, the screen lit up with an incoming video call. No name. No number. Just a black profile picture. Every instinct screamed to ignore it. I clicked accept anyway. At first, nothing but black. Then, grainy movement. The image resolved into Eli, sitting on a cold cement floor. His shirt was ripped at the collar, his hands out of frame, but I had the sickening feeling they were tied. His eyes darted toward the camera, then to something off-screen. "Matt," his voice was urgent, but he flinched mid-word and glanced sharply to his left. The feed went dead. A single message appeared in white text on a black background. "If you want him alive, don't tell anyone." I stared, frozen. My breath felt heavy in my chest. This wasn't a prank. Someone had Eli, and now they had me watching. I reached for my phone, but a shadow shifted beneath my front door. I crept closer. An envelope lay on the floor. No address, no stamp. Inside was a Polaroid photograph. It was me, asleep in my bed. Taken tonight. My mouth went dry. Someone had been here. Inside. Watching me. I shoved the photo in my pocket, locked the door twice, and ran down the stairs 2 at a time. Outside, the street was silent except for a black sedan parked across from the building. Its engine idled, exhaust curling into the cold air. Tinted windows hid the driver. I started toward my car, but the sedan's headlights flashed twice. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another unknown number. Go back upstairs. I didn't move. The driver's door opened a few inches, then stopped. Whoever was inside just sat there, waiting. Every nerve in my body told me to run, but if they had Eli. The door shut. The sedan rolled away slowly, disappearing around the corner. My phone buzzed again. Another message. You have 1 hour. 1 hour. I stared at the glowing words on my phone screen until they blurred. My watch read 3:29 a.m. That meant 4:29. Whatever this was, it would happen then. I shoved my phone into my pocket and started toward my car. But when I reached the driver's side, I saw it, a small white envelope taped to the window. My name, written in blocky capital letters. Inside, a single page from what looked like an old ledger book. Names and dates in neat handwriting. Most of the names had been crossed out with red ink. My brother's name was there. Mine was below it. Neither was crossed out. My pulse hammered. I scanned the street. Empty. Too empty. No movement in any window. No sound except the faint hum of a transformer somewhere down the block. I got in the car, locked the doors, and started the engine. My first thought was to drive straight to the police. But what if that's what they expected me to do? What if that's how they'd find me? The passenger seat vibrated. My phone again. A new message. Drive to the corner of 5th and Alder. Park. Wait. I gripped the wheel. 5th and Alder was in the old industrial district, half the buildings abandoned, no streetlights for blocks. Going there at night was a bad idea. But so was ignoring the people who had Eli. The streets grew darker as I drove, the orange glow of the main road falling away behind me. I counted the blocks, my grip tightening with each turn. Finally, I saw the intersection. No cars. No people. Just the skeletons of old brick warehouses. I parked, engine running. Seconds stretched. A figure emerged from the shadows across the street. Tall, wearing a long coat and gloves. They walked slowly toward my car, not hiding, not hurrying. My finger hovered over the lock button. They stopped at the passenger side and tapped on the glass. I hesitated, then lowered it just an inch. Time is moving, the voice said. It was low, steady. If you want him back, you follow instructions exactly. No questions. Where is my brother? My voice cracked. A faint smile. Alive. For now. They slid an old flip phone through the gap in the window. Only this. You'll get calls when it's time to move. Destroy your own phone. I stared at it, my mind racing. Why? The man stepped back into the shadows. 53 minutes. And then he was gone. I sat there, gripping the strange phone, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. When I looked back up, the street was empty again. The flip phone felt alien in my hand, small, cheap, outdated. I turned it over, half expecting to find a tracker or some hidden device. Nothing obvious. Destroy my own phone? That part one couldn't bring myself to do yet. Instead, I shoved it deep into my jacket pocket and kept both devices. The street was still empty. I rolled up the window, shifted into gear, and pulled away from 5th and Alder. My mind kept replaying the man's words. Time is moving. At 3:45 a.m., the flip phone rang. The ringtone was tinny, almost mechanical. I answered on the first ring. Drive north, a distorted voice instructed. Stay under the speed limit. No sudden turns. You're being watched. My throat tightened. If you hurt Eli, every second you waste is his. The line clicked dead. I followed the directions without deviation. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. Left at Pine Street. Park by the 3rd lamppost. Look under the bench. I did as told. The bench was old, paint peeling, bolts rusted. Beneath it, taped to the underside, was a small black pouch. Inside, a car key, a folded note, and another Polaroid. The photo made my chest tighten. Eli again, in the same dim basement. His head was down, but I could see a dark bruise on his cheek. The note was short: drive the car. Follow the GPS. Do not stop for anyone. I looked around. At the far end of the street, parked in deep shadow, was an old silver sedan. The kind you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. As I approached, the key fob unlocked the doors with a soft click. Inside, the air smelled faintly of gasoline and something metallic. A GPS unit was mounted to the dash, already loaded with a route. Estimated time: 42 minutes. Destination: unknown. I glanced at my watch: 3:57 a.m. The 1-hour countdown was almost up. I started driving. The streets blurred past, darker and emptier with every turn. At one point, I saw headlights in the mirror, a black SUV trailing me at a steady distance. Not too close, not too far. The GPS led me out of the city, down a narrow road lined with trees. The moon was low, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt. Then the voice from the flip phone again. In 2 minutes, you'll see a wooden bridge. Stop before it. Leave the car running. Walk. The bridge appeared just as he said, old, weathered, the planks warped and splintered. Beyond it, the road vanished into thick forest. I parked, engine idling, and stepped into the cold air. My breath fogged. The silence was absolute: no wind, no insects, nothing. Halfway across the bridge, my phone buzzed. The message was only 2 words: look down. I did. In the black water below, illuminated by the faint moonlight, floated a single object. Eli's wallet. The sight of Eli's wallet drifting in that black, silent water froze me to the spot. It wasn't just the wallet, it was what it meant. He'd had it in the video. Now it was here. I crouched, gripping the railing, eyes straining in the moonlight. No movement in the water except the slow, lazy spin of the leather rectangle. I pulled out my own phone to take a picture and stopped. If they were watching, photographing it might be breaking a rule I didn't know about. The flip phone rang. Keep walking, the distorted voice said. Leave the wallet. What have you done to him? My voice came out harsher than I expected. A pause. Time is moving. The line went dead. I crossed the rest of the bridge. The boards creaked under my weight, echoing in the stillness. Beyond the bridge, a narrow dirt path disappeared into the trees. I followed it, every step making the darkness thicker. After maybe 5 minutes, a light appeared ahead, faint, wavering. I slowed, listening. Somewhere deep in the woods, a branch cracked. Eli? I called before I could stop myself. Silence. Then a figure stepped into the glow of the light. It wasn't Eli. A man, tall and thin, with a hood pulled low over his face, stood in the middle of the path. In his hand was another Polaroid. He held it out without speaking. I took it. My stomach dropped. The photo showed me, right now, standing on this path, the hooded man in front of me. Same angle, same light, as if it had been taken seconds before I arrived. I looked up, but the man was already walking away, deeper into the trees. The flip phone buzzed. A text: follow him. We walked for what felt like forever. The trees closed in, branches arching overhead like skeletal fingers. Then, suddenly, the forest opened into a clearing. In the center stood a single wooden chair under a hanging bulb connected to a cable that vanished into the darkness above. Sit, the man said, his voice low but steady. I hesitated. The bulb flickered, and for a moment I thought I saw movement just beyond the edge of the light, shadows shifting in the blackness. I sat. The man stepped behind me. Something cold brushed my wrist. A zip tie. Another around the other wrist. My pulse roared in my ears. Then he leaned close, his breath hot against my ear. They'll be here soon. The bulb above me buzzed, casting a small trembling circle of light over the chair and the patch of dirt beneath it. Beyond that circle, the forest was pure black, swallowing the outlines of the trees. The hooded man stood somewhere behind me. I could hear him breathing, slow, measured, but he didn't speak again. Minutes dragged. Then, from the darkness ahead, came the sound of footsteps. Not one set, several. Crunching leaves, snapping twigs, moving in perfect unison. My throat was dry. Eli? I called, my voice cracking. No answer. Figures emerged one by one into the light. 3 of them, all wearing identical dark coats and gloves. Their faces were hidden by smooth, featureless masks that reflected the bulb's weak glow. The tallest stepped forward until the tips of his boots touched the edge of the light. "You have questions," he said. The voice was distorted, almost mechanical. "You'll get answers when we decide you're ready." I struggled against the zip ties. "Where is my brother?" The mask tilted slightly, as if considering. "Closer than you think. But he's not the one you should be worried about." Something cold slid down my spine. The man in the mask pulled a folded sheet of paper from his coat and tossed it at my feet. It landed just inside the circle of light. My name was at the top in bold letters. Below it, a list of dates and locations. Some I recognized: my apartment building, my office, my favorite cafe. Others meant nothing to me. The most recent entry was today's date. The location: Bridge, 4:05 a.m. I looked up, heart pounding. "You've been part of this longer than you realize," the masked man said. Another stepped forward and held out a small object. My phone. My real phone. I'd left it in my pocket, but now it was here, in their hand. "How?" "They cut me off. You'll leave with one of us. The rest will. Prepare." The hooded man behind me sliced through the zip ties. My wrists burned from the friction. He pulled me to my feet and guided me toward the tree line. As we stepped into the darkness, I glanced back at the clearing. The 2 masked figures still there had turned away from the chair. One of them was now holding another Polaroid. Even from here I could see it was fresh, edges still curling. It was me, standing exactly where I was right now, halfway into the trees. The hooded man's grip was firm but not rough, guiding me through the trees along a path so narrow I wouldn't have noticed it alone. The forest here was different, quieter, heavier, as if even the air was listening. We walked for several minutes before the faint glow of headlights bled through the branches ahead. A dark van waited on a dirt road, engine running. The back doors were open. Inside, shadows moved. The man stopped and handed me the flip phone. "You'll keep receiving instructions," he said, his voice low. "Follow them exactly." I climbed into the van. The interior smelled faintly of oil and damp fabric. 3 benches lined the sides. On the far bench sat another masked figure, identical to the ones in the clearing. They didn't look at me, didn't move. The doors slammed shut. The van pulled away, jolting over ruts in the road. I tried to watch through the small, barred window, but the forest quickly swallowed any landmarks. Minutes passed in silence until the flip phone vibrated in my hand. A text: "Check under the seat." I reached down. My fingers found a small, hard object taped to the underside. I pulled it free, a USB drive unmarked. The masked figure finally spoke. "That contains what you need to see. But you won't open it until we say." "What is this? What do you want from me?" No reply. The van eventually slowed and turned onto a paved road. City lights appeared in the distance, but we didn't enter. Instead, we pulled into a deserted parking lot beside an old warehouse with boarded windows. The door opened. A hand motioned for me to get out. The air smelled of rust and rain. The masked figure pointed to a single lit door in the side of the warehouse. Inside. Alone. I hesitated. "And if I don't?" They didn't answer, just held my gaze through the blank mask until I stepped toward the building. The metal door groaned as I pushed it open. Inside was a narrow corridor with peeling paint and a single bare bulb swaying slightly from a wire. At the end, another door stood ajar. I stepped through and froze. The room beyond was filled with photographs, hundreds of them, pinned to every wall. All of them were of me, Eli, and our parents. Some recent, some from years ago, some from moments I didn't even remember living. In the center of the room, on a table, sat another Polaroid, fresh, edges curling. It was a picture of me entering this room, taken seconds before I had. I stepped deeper into the room, my eyes darting from one photo to the next. Some were grainy, clearly taken from a distance. Others were crisp, as if shot just a few feet away. There I was at age 7, holding Eli's hand on the first day of school. At 15, blowing out birthday candles. Last year, standing outside my apartment building, looking down at my phone. Whoever took these had been watching for decades. On the far wall, an entire section was devoted to Eli. Photos of him alone, with me, with our parents. But a disturbing pattern emerged in many shots. There were figures in the background, barely visible, always dressed in dark coats. I reached for one pin near the edge, but a voice from behind stopped me cold. Don't remove anything. I turned. Another masked figure stood in the doorway. I hadn't heard the door open. They stepped inside, their presence filling the space. You've been part of this longer than you think, they said, their voice flat, almost bored. Every choice you've made, every step you've taken, led you here. I gripped the edge of the table. Where's Eli? They tilted their head. Closer than you realize. From their coat, they produced a small box, no bigger than a deck of cards, and set it on the table. Open it. Inside was a cassette tape, old and worn, with my name written in faded ink. No player in sight. I looked back at them. What is this? They didn't answer. Instead, they walked to the far wall and pulled down a single photograph. I caught only a glimpse before they slipped it into their pocket, but it was enough to make my stomach drop. It was of our parents, younger, standing in front of a house I didn't recognize, and in the background, a small boy who looked exactly like me, even though the photo was decades old. My head spun. What is this place? The masked figure ignored the question and gestured to the door. It's time. I followed them out into the corridor. The warehouse was silent, the air thick. We stepped into the parking lot where the vans still waited. The hooded man from before was there, leaning against the side, flipping something small in his hand. He looked at me. One more stop. The flip phone in my pocket buzzed. A new text, this ends tonight. The van moved through the city without headlights, gliding like a shadow. I sat in the back, gripping the cassette tapes so hard my fingers ached. Every turn took us farther from anything familiar. We stopped in front of a tall, windowless building on the outskirts. The hooded man opened the door. Inside, he said. The interior was cold and sterile, all concrete and metal. We descended 2 flights of stairs into a dimly lit hallway. At the end was a single steel door. It opened before we reached it. Eli stood inside. Alive. Untied. His expression, wrong. Not relief. Not fear. Something else. Matt, he said, almost warmly. You made it. I froze in the doorway. What is this? Who are these people? They're the ones who've been keeping us safe, he said. Our whole lives. Safe? The word rang false. I glanced at the masked figures lining the room's walls. Eli stepped closer. They know everything about us because they made everything about us. The school you went to. The jobs you got. The people you dated. All arranged. To prepare you. For what? My voice was a whisper. He smiled faintly. For tonight. One of the masked figures brought over an old tape recorder. My hands shook as I placed the cassette inside. The tape clicked, hissed, and then a voice filled the room. Not Eli's. Not mine. Our father's. If you're hearing this, it means the circle is closing. We made choices long before you were born. We owed them something. We owed them you. My breath caught. You will take my place, Matthew. Just as I took my father's. That is how the family survives. The tape ended with a hard click. I stared at Eli, my mind scrambling. You knew. He nodded slowly. One of us had to lead. One of us had to follow. The hooded man stepped behind me, resting a firm hand on my shoulder. It's time to choose. I looked at Eli. At the masks. At the walls closing in. And in that moment, I understood. The call in the night hadn't been a warning to keep me safe. It had been a warning to keep me here. When I finally spoke, my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. What happens if I refuse? Eli's smile didn't reach his eyes. You won't. The lights went out.